Hello and welcome to an overview of the 2026 crop cost of production. My name is Darren Bond, Farm Management Specialist Crops with Manitoba Agriculture. Today I will be providing a summary and highlights of our annual crop cost of production guide. Topics today include how we compile the information for the numbers contained in the document, an overview of the 2026 crop cost of production, including profitability and break-even yields and prices. I'll also be discussing changes from our last 2025 crop cost of production budget guide, comparing our 25 guide to our 2026 guide with a focus on fertilizer pricing. Finally, I'll discuss some key takeaways from this year's document. Our crop cost of production budget guide is an annual forward-looking guide produced at the end of each calendar year. When researching costs, we research much like from a farmer's perspective. We reach out to input retailers across the province to find common pricing for things like seed, fertilizer, and crop protection pesticides. Much like a growing number of producers in Manitoba, we are increasingly using generic and post-patent pesticides in our pricing model to reflect what is going on in the input industry. With respect to fertilizer, we conduct surveys twice a year in April and October. Crop insurance or acre insurance costs are based on the previous year, with 2026 acre insurance costs based on the 2025 acre insurance costs, as these costs and coverages are released after the release of our guide. Costs like fixed costs can be quite variable across farms. With respect to determining land costs, we use Farm Credit Canada's Farmland Values Report data, along with Statistics Canada data on equity levels on farms in Manitoba. Based on this, we come up with an estimated land payment for the sample farm in the document. Machinery costs are determined in a similar fashion using Statistics Canada data on equipment investment amounts and equity levels with equipment on farms in Manitoba. Finally, we have an owner's withdrawal amount and labor amount to represent withdrawals from the farm by the owner. Lastly, we add the operating costs, fixed costs, owner's labor and living costs to come up with an estimated total cost for 16 crops in the document. From there, we estimate average yields and a target price based on new crop fall 2026 delivery to conduct a profitability analysis. Here's our crop cost of production for 2026 showing the operating costs, fixed costs, owner's labor and living costs, and total costs. Please note I will focus on hard red spring wheat, canola, and soybeans later in the presentation to show the differences between 2025 and 2026 costs and profitability. Moving down, we have the estimated farm gate prices for new crop fall 2026 delivery, along with the target yield and price based on Manitoba Agriculture Services Corporation acre insurance data for average yields in the province. A quick note on the targeted price per unit. These prices are determined in late November 2025, so there can be significant differences in values based on when the prices are taken. It is important for producers to do their own cost of production using their own numbers to be the most accurate as possible. As we can see at the bottom of the slide, marginal returns over total costs or net profit are projected to be largely negative for many crops shown. These calculations consider a fully costed cost of production. When I say fully costed, I mean fixed costs and the owner's withdrawals are also taken out of this, which, as we can see here, is over $200 per acre. On this slide, we can see the break-even prices. For the 6 crops grown, break-even price is determined by dividing costs over expected yield. Break-even prices can be very useful. It helps with identifying market opportunities and also identifies the likelihood of profitability when we compare our break-even price to current market prices. As we can see here, hard red spring wheat's break-even price is $8.86 per bushel. Oats is $4.49 per bushel. Corn is almost $6 per bushel. Canola's break-even price is $14.89 per bushel, while soybeans is $12.70 per bushel. This slide shows break-even yields for crops. Break-even yields are calculated by dividing costs over the expected price per bushel. Break-even yields can show the likelihood of generating profitability when one compares them to average farm yields seen on the farm. In 2026, using the information on our crop cost of production guide, break-even yields for hard red spring wheat is 75.4 bushels per acre, 126.8 bushels per acre for oats, 147.6 bushels per acre for corn, 47.1 bushels per acre for canola, and 42.2 bushels per acre for soybeans. This slide shows Manitoba Agriculture's crop cost of production numbers from 2020 to 2026 for hard red spring wheat, oats, canola, corn, and soybeans. As we can see in 2022, costs jumped significantly for all crops, with 2023 having the highest costs of production, with costs easing off slightly after that. While costs have eased off slightly, we can still see that they are historically high. When we consider the decline in grain prices, crop input costs have not declined at the same rate as commodity prices, which is what's causing the cost price squeeze that we're currently experiencing. Cost of production in 2026 is slightly higher than in 2025, largely due to the increase in fertilizer prices in the last year. Now let's drill down and look at a few different crops comparing 2025 cost of production guide to the 2026 cost of production guide. Here we're looking at hard red spring wheat. On the left-hand side, we can see the costing with 2025 costs on the left-hand side and 2026 costs on the right-hand side. Some highlights of the changes include seed costs coming down about 6% compared to 2025. Fertilizer costs are up 18%. Crop protection pesticide costs are down roughly 9% compared to 2025. Fuel costs are up 9% per acre. Fixed costs are roughly the same from 2025 to 2026. This is because while machinery and land costs have increased from last year, interest costs on fixed costs have come down, essentially nullifying the land and equipment increases in costs. This is true for all land and equipment costs for the various crops in the guide. Total costs are up by $17.11 per acre. With respect to projected pricing, the price per bushel is down 3% from last year's guide. Margin over operating is down 14% per acre, with net profit being down by $25.61 per acre compared to 2025. Focusing on canola, again on the left we see 2025 crop cost of production estimates from last year's guide, and on the right 2026 cost estimates. Here we can see canola fertilizer costs are up roughly 17% per acre. Crop production and pesticide costs are up 18% per acre as compared to 2025. Much like hard red spring wheat, fuel costs are up 9% per acre. This results in total costs being up by $34.50 per acre. Using projected new crop fall 2026 delivery prices, we can see the price per bushel has increased roughly 7.5% from last year's guide. Margin over operating is up 7% per acre, with net profit up by $10.50 per acre. This next slide shows soybean cost of production between 2025 and 2026, with the 2025 costs being on the left and the 2026 costs being on the right. Fertilizer costs are up 14% per acre, largely due to the amount of phosphorus required for soybean production. Crop protection pesticide costs are up roughly 7% per acre. Fuel costs are up 10% per acre. This results in total costs being up by $9.33 per acre. The projected price per bushel has increased between the 2 years by 6%. Please note that there has been a yield change, moving from 40 bushels per acre in 2025 to 42 bushels per acre in 2026. This is based on Manitoba Agricultural Services Corporation's average yields in the province, which has been trending higher over the last few years. Margin over operating per acre is up 28%, and net profit per acre being up $46.17 per acre. It's time to dive into some fertilizer analysis. This slide focuses on urea nitrogen. On the left-hand side of the bar chart, we can see the average urea prices over the last few years. When we conduct fertilizer price surveys, we conduct one survey in the fall of next year's crop and one survey in the spring for that year's crop. The red bar is the previous fall, with the blue bar being the spring survey price. So for example, in 2025, we would have collected prices on October of 2024 and on April of 2025 to determine those prices. Generally speaking, prices are cheaper in the previous fall than in the spring. However, we can see that there is an inversion in 2023, with the spring pricing being considerably cheaper. On the right-hand side, the line chart shows fertilizer affordability, which is the amount of bushels required to purchase 1 ton of urea. The top set of red lines is wheat, and the bottom set of blue lines is canola. Here we can see the dotted lines are the average amount of bushels of grain required to purchase 1 ton of urea. Looking at this data, urea is still slightly more expensive than average. Let's now focus in on phosphorus. The bar chart on the left is phosphorus pricing for the previous fall and spring, and we can see that phosphorus is expensive when compared to previous years. When we consider the price of grain, looking at the chart on the right, we can see that phosphorus is the most expensive it's been in quite some time, with the line chart in red on the top being wheat and blue on the bottom being canola. The dotted lines are again the average amount of bushels of grain required to purchase 1 ton of phosphorus. There are some key takeaways from Manitoba Agriculture's 2026 crop cost of production. Doing your own cost of production is very important, especially in years like this, where there's a cost price squeeze happening. Identifying profitable crops when finalizing your crop rotation will be important this year, as is identifying marketing opportunities. Crop price volatility could still lead to some opportunities for profit. However, these opportunities may be less frequent and for shorter periods of time than what we're accustomed to. Finally, maintaining yield will be very important in 2026 to protect the gross revenue per acre in order to pay for what we are projecting in 2026 to be stubbornly high input costs. That concludes the presentation on Manitoba Agriculture's 2026 crop cost of production. Should you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us by visiting our website at www.manitoba.ca/agriculture or our toll-free number at 1-844-769-6224. Follow us on X at @mbgovag. Please check out our videos on YouTube at www.youtube.com/Manitoba Agriculture. For more information regarding agri insurance, please visit Manitoba Agricultural Services Corporation at www.masc.mb.ca. Thank you and good luck in the upcoming growing season.